On the 26th of January 2024, Jurgen Klopp announced he was leaving Liverpool Football Club.
I will leave the club at the end of the season.
After winning 8 trophies, including the Premier League, the FA Cup and the Champions League, creating an infamous rivalry and bringing one of the world's most famous cities to complete harmony, Liverpool fans were left wondering, where do we go from here? Well, the answer is both simple in principle, but unfathomably hard to action. You rebuild, you relearn, you restart. You see, dynasties, eras, empires, they all inevitably end. What follows is anyone's guess. The continuation of an orchestrated regime, a battle for power, or a decade in the wilderness. It's easy to see Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool as synonymous with each other, but the enigmatic German was only manager for 9 of the club's 132 years history, the 23rd of 24 managers since 1892. So it poses the questions, what constitutes a dynasty? How do dynasties stay dynasties? And more importantly, how do they start? First, we need to establish the parameters of a dynasty: longevity, success, culture. Did Klopp's Liverpool have these 3 things? How did he work to establish these things and bring Liverpool back into the spotlight? Enough questions. Let's start by looking at how Liverpool were before he joined. The 2013-14 season marked a pivotal moment in Liverpool's storied history. After finishing 7th in the league and with no European competition to congest the calendar, excuses were running thin for Liverpool to not at least challenge for the Premier League title. Despite telling the media that he wishes to leave the club to fight for silverware elsewhere, surrounding a £40 million and £1 bid from Arsenal, Luis Suarez would not be allowed to leave the club, and instead spearheaded Rodgers' attack in a squad that also contained a Steven Gerrard at the tail of his career, a young Raheem Sterling looking to make a name for himself, and Daniel Sturridge, who for large parts of the season would partner Luis Suarez in a strike force, just ahead of Philippe Coutinho. Liverpool's attack was one of the most exciting in the league. Their style was to live by the sword, die by the sword. Be it based on mentality or the personnel they had at hand, they were very much of a squad with a mindset of it's okay to concede 4, just so long as we score 5. Despite the aforementioned attack boasting some impressive players, their squad overall lacked substance, edge and ability. Simon Mignolet, Kolo Touré and Mamadou Sakho joined a defence of Daniel Agger, Jose Enrique and Glenn Johnson. And yet despite an uninspiring back line, Liverpool impressed. As Christmas approached, Liverpool stood atop the Premier League, with only 3 defeats in the league by this point. However, the optimism began to unravel following 2 significant defeats in quick succession. Back-to-back losses against Chelsea and Manchester City dropped them to 5th and outside the Champions League places. Both matches pushed a narrative of Liverpool lacking character, with Rodgers' side leading both games before the home sides turned the deficit around. With no European football and early defeats in both the League Cup and FA Cup, Liverpool's season rested on the Premier League going into 2014. Liverpool responded in the most remarkable way, with a 16-match unbeaten run, draws to Aston Villa and West Brom in January and February, before winning 11 back-to-back games, including a 5-1 victory against Arsenal.
Raheem Sterling makes it 5 for Liverpool.
3-0 against Manchester United.
He's done it again! Steven Gerrard for Liverpool!
And 3-2 against fellow challengers Manchester City, where Gerrard embraced the team in a post-match huddle reciting the infamous line, "We don't let this slip." Game week 35, 3 games to go, and Liverpool boasted a 5-point gap over Chelsea and a 6-point gap over Manchester City. The venue, Anfield, a place where Liverpool had only lost once all season, back in September. The opponent, the team from the capital currently sat in 2nd place, Chelsea. Liverpool started the game as they had all season, fast and frantic, looking to trouble Chelsea early on in front of their adoring fans. However, Jose Mourinho's side sat back, unmoved and undeterred from their game plan of annoying and frustrating Liverpool. Chelsea's 5-man midfield, as well as their extended delays at every set piece, left Liverpool with little option to break them down. With what would have likely been the last kick of the half, Mamadou Sakho passed the ball to Steven Gerrard in his own half, yards away from the halfway line. What happened next has been described by Gerrard himself as a moment that will haunt me for a very long time. As the skipper turned with the ball, his foot gave way and he slipped to the ground, allowing Chelsea striker Demba Ba to carry the ball through an open Liverpool defence and slot the ball past Simon Mignolet. Despite chants of Gerrard, Gerrard, Gerrard from the faithful cop, a resilient Chelsea defence held firm and a late Willian goal secured 3 points for the Blues, leaving Liverpool and Gerrard licking their wounds. Despite the defeat, Liverpool were still right in the title race, but now faced an uphill battle. Tied on points with Manchester City, they sat 9 behind on goal difference as they visited Selhurst Park to face Crystal Palace on Monday Night Football. With Manchester City not facing Aston Villa until the Wednesday, Liverpool had the opportunity to put the pressure on Manchester City, both in requiring a win and reducing the deficit. And reduce the deficit, they did. They flexed this muscle again against Crystal Palace, with an early goal by Welshman Joe Allen, followed by a Damien Delaney own goal, as Suarez netted past Speroni in the 55th minute. His reaction said it all, an immediate grab of the ball, placing it on the halfway line, ready to go again. Liverpool needed more. However, for all their brilliance in attack, time and time again, Liverpool's defensive frailties shone through. With the score still 3-0, Delaney scored a stunner to spare his blushes for his earlier mistake. 90 seconds later, Dwight Gale's first-time finish brought Palace within shot of snatching something at home. It would be Gale again. A Glenn Murray flick-on left him open to slot past Mignolet and shock the travelling Liverpool fans in a game mockingly dubbed Crystanbul. Within 2 games across 8 days, Liverpool went from having one hand on the trophy that had evaded them for 24 years to nothing. Liverpool's biggest strength all season was scoring goals, 101 in the league, shared mainly by Raheem Sterling with 9, Steven Gerrard with 13, Daniel Sturridge with 21, and of course Luis Suarez with 31. Brendan Rodgers had created fast, fun and frantic football on Merseyside, but they always say that defences win titles. Liverpool would finish the season as runners-up, 2 points behind Manchester City, and their quest for the Premier League continued. Liverpool had reason to be hopeful as the season wound down. Both Sterling and Coutinho had shown real promise and were developing into potential world beaters. Sturridge had a career best year, and Gerrard was still able to perform at the level they'd seen for the last decade. Get the signings right, avoid any injuries, and they could well make that extra step. Expectations were high ahead of the 2014-15 season. Despite Luis Suarez leaving for around $75 million, the owners, Fenway Sports Group, redistributed that back into the squad, spending nearly $120 million across a variety of players. Adam Lallana, Dejan Lovren and Ricky Lambert all came in from Southampton after their impressive season, whilst Mario Balotelli, Lazar Markovic, Divock Origi, Emre Can and Alberto Moreno all came in from across Europe. Liverpool were also in the Champions League for the first time since 2010 and hoped with the larger squad they were able to compete on all fronts. However, it didn't take long for things to unravel. A combination of Sturridge picking up another hamstring injury that left him out for over 4 months, and Lambert, Balotelli and Fabio Borini not scoring in nearly 1,000 combined minutes, Liverpool suffered their worst start to a Premier League season in over 50 years and languished in 8th place. The other competitions weren't much better either. Liverpool would go far in both domestic cups, but lost in the semi-finals of the FA Cup and the League Cup. The Champions League return was even worse. They finished 3rd in a relatively easy group, which saw Liverpool drop down to the Europa League, in which they faced and lost to Turkish side Besiktas in the round of 32. This was after Brendan Rodgers bent Steven Gerrard and other key players in a 3-0 defeat to Real Madrid at Anfield, much to the frustration of their fans. Liverpool fans grew even more disheartened as at the start of January 2015, Steven Gerrard announced he'd be leaving Liverpool after 25 years when his contract was up, among speculation that he'd fallen out with Brendan Rodgers. Despite a brief resurgence, a 13-league match unbeaten run following the Christmas break, the flaws within the squad were evident. The defence continued to look disjointed, with the fullbacks being a considerable issue both offensively and defensively. However, it was the attack that looked the most depressing. The once driving force of the Brendan Rodgers tenure was lethargic and ambitious and downright poor. A key moment in this season came with a crucial loss to Manchester United, which was exacerbated by Gerrard's infamous red card shortly after coming on as a substitute. The defeat not only solidified Liverpool's struggles, but also illustrated the fragility of the team's confidence. Liverpool were relying on Arsenal winning the FA Cup to qualify for the Europa League, and so the final game's attention turned to Steven Gerrard's farewell. Unfortunately for Gerrard, things could not have gone worse. No one could have foreseen Stoke putting 6 past Liverpool. And despite Gerrard getting a consolation goal, the Scouse legend ended his Liverpool career in dismal fashion. It's so far read as dismal, but Rodgers did draw a lot of short straws this season. Suarez leaving was never going to be a positive outcome, and to lose Sturridge for such a long period as well made his style of football nearly impossible to replicate, despite the effort of some players. The new signings were almost entirely lacklustre. Rumours often swirled that Rodgers had little to no say in the comings and goings at Anfield, and considering the stylistic clash that Borini, Balotelli and Lambert posed to the attack the season before showed, it's hard not to take stock in those rumours. Whether you put the blame on him, the club or the players, and with 2 wins in 9 to finish the season, Brendan Rodgers was under pressure. After refusing a new contract and amidst a media frenzy, labelling him as greedy, a mercenary and unproven, Raheem Sterling would leave Liverpool for Manchester City. Many of last season's transfers would also leave Anfield, with Lambert, Balotelli and Markovic all departing in various capacities, a testament to how truly poor the transfer planning was in the summer of 2014. In their wake, Liverpool again spent big, bringing in Joe Gomez, Danny Ings, Nathaniel Klein, Christian Benteke, and Hoffenheim attacker Roberto Firmino. Despite the financial backing, it was no secret that Brendan Rodgers was on borrowed time. He himself told the media that he would not blame the board if they let him go, following the 6-1 defeat to Stoke at the end of last season. It didn't take long for Liverpool to act. After a mixed start to the season with 3 wins, 3 draws and 2 losses, Brendan Rodgers was sacked from Liverpool, announced only minutes after their 1-1 draw in the Merseyside derby. Further leaks suggested that the decision to sack Rodgers was made 2 weeks prior to the Merseyside derby, which befuddled both pundits and fans alike as to why he was trusted to start the season if his tenure was so close to ending. Reactions to the sacking were fairly textbook. Pundits, specifically Liverpool-centric ones like Carragher, Redknapp and Souness, all expressed an understanding as to why the board acted, but raised fair questions on the timing. The fans praised Rodgers for both loving the club and giving them one of the best seasons they'd had in recent memories, but acknowledged that his time had run out. At the heart of Rodgers' demise at Liverpool was a failed, flawed recruitment policy that saw nearly £300 million spent since the 42-year-old's arrival in the summer of 2012, but most of the world-class talent he possessed walked out the door. Across his tenure, Rodgers had to deal with the departures of Jamie Carragher, Steven Gerrard, Raheem Sterling and of course Luis Suarez, while trusting a transfer committee to find him talent that could challenge for the highest honours in the game that simply fell short. 23 players were signed permanently during Rodgers' reign, but besides Daniel Sturridge and Philippe Coutinho, it's hard to pinpoint who exactly were outright successes during Brendan Rodgers' reign in Merseyside. The Rodgers era at Liverpool was a fleeting glimpse of what could have been, rather than the foundation of a dynasty. The Northern Irish manager built a side that was electric in attack, with Luis Suarez and Daniel Sturridge at the heart of a free-scoring team. But it was ultimately one that lacked the defensive resilience and squad depth to sustain long-term success. The near miss of the 13-14 season exposed the cracks that would widen in the following seasons. The over-reliance on individual brilliance, a flawed recruitment strategy, and a leadership void as icons like Gerrard and Suarez departed. Without a clear long-term vision, Liverpool drifted in the years that followed. That needed to change. Jurgen Klopp arrived at Liverpool as a man already revered in world football. His Borussia Dortmund side had dethroned Bayern Munich, won back-to-back Bundesliga titles, and reached a Champions League final playing an exhilarating brand of fluid attacking football. Charismatic, passionate, and brutally honest, he walked into Anfield as a manager who, in his own words, wanted to turn doubters into believers. His first press conference was an early sign of what was to come. Klopp immediately distanced himself from comparisons to managerial legends, stating, "I'm the normal one," a direct contrast to Jose Mourinho's self-proclaimed Special One title a decade earlier. But beneath the humour, there was steel. Klopp made it clear that he was here to rebuild, to bring Liverpool back to where it belonged. Not overnight, but through hard work, trust, and identity. His first game, a goalless draw against Tottenham Hotspur, set the tone despite the scoreline. It wasn't a spectacle, but the early signs of a stylistic shift were evident. Liverpool ran more, pressed harder, and showed glimpses of the energy that would soon become their trademark. In fact, the team covered more distance in that game than in any Premier League match that season under Brendan Rodgers. Klopp's famous gegenpressing philosophy was already being ingrained. Players spoke about the intensity of training sessions, with Adam Lallana later admitting that Klopp's methods initially left them completely dead after games. But Klopp had inherited a squad not built for this relentless, high-intensity approach. This was not yet the well-oiled machine that would go on to conquer Europe. This was still a side littered with inconsistency and fragility. Despite this, Klopp's impact was immediate, but maybe not in the way many anticipated. Results came and went, but from minute one, Klopp embraced the city of Liverpool, and more importantly, the city of Liverpool embraced him. Fans clung on to every word the German spoke, never once faltering. Very rarely do non-Scousers come in and win the hearts and minds that Klopp did in such a short space of time, but the energy, character, and jovial personality of the 48-year-old had every red shirt in Liverpool singing from the Jurgen Klopp hymn sheet. And this was before any real turn of form. In his first few months, Liverpool picked up a stunning 3-1 victory over Chelsea at Stamford Bridge.
Benteke! 3-1 Liverpool!
A 4-1 demolition of Manchester City at the Etihad.
It's Skirtle! Oh, they've got it!
And a famous 5-4 win away at Norwich, sealed by Adam Lallana's last-minute goal and chaotic shirtless celebration.
You just would not believe!
These early moments helped endear Klopp to the fans, but they also show that Liverpool still had a long way to go. For every breathtaking victory, there are frustrating setbacks. Losses to Newcastle, Watford and West Ham expose the team's defensive frailties and lack of squad depth. Liverpool's inconsistency in the league meant that Champions League football was never really within reach, with the club inevitably finishing 8th, missing out on European football altogether. But Klopp's first season was about something greater, a shift in mentality, a shift in belief. Liverpool reached the League Cup final, only to lose to Manchester City on penalties. And then in Europe, Klopp's presence ignited something special. The Europa League run of 2015-2016 is remembered not just for the final, but for the nights that defined it. In the round of 16, Liverpool faced Manchester United in European competition for the first time ever. A dominant 2-0 first leg victory at Anfield, followed by the 1-1 draw at Old Trafford, sent Liverpool through. But the true moment came in the quarter-finals. Liverpool versus Borussia Dortmund. Klopp against his former club. The first leg ended 1-1 in Germany, setting up a decisive night at Anfield. What followed was one of the greatest European nights in the club's history. Dortmund raced into a 3-1 lead in aggregate, effectively sealing the tie. But under the Anfield lights, something clicked. Something we all come to find out becomes a regular occurrence. Divock Origi pulled one back, Philippe Coutinho curled in a second, Mamadou Sakho levelled the tie, and in the dying moments, Dejan Lovren, previously a symbol of defensive uncertainty, rose highest to score the winner, sending Anfield into absolute chaos. It was a moment that embodied Klopp's vision, resilience, belief, emotion. Klopp's celebration, sprinting down the touchline, fists pumping wildly, captured the raw energy of the night. Players spoke afterward about how Klopp had convinced them at half-time that a comeback was possible, reinforcing the growing idea that under him, no game was ever truly lost. They would beat Villarreal over 2 legs, but ultimately Liverpool would fall short in the final, losing 3-1 to Seville. The second half was a collapse, a painful reminder that Klopp's Liverpool was still in the infancy. Seville's experience showed. Liverpool's defensive frailties were exposed once again, and the midfield struggled to control the game. Klopp later admitted that his players were running around like headless chickens, rather than sticking to their shape. But the message was clear. This team was beginning to believe again. With a full pre-season under his belt, Klopp's second season was where the transformation truly began. In the summer transfer window, he wasted no time in shaping the squad to fit his vision. Sadio Mane arrived from Southampton, Jorginho Wijnaldum was brought in from Newcastle, and Joel Matip signed on a free transfer from Schalke. More importantly, Klopp made it clear that Liverpool would not sign players simply for the sake of it. Every move had to make sense from a tactical and a personality standpoint. Players leaving the club showed a shift in mentality too. Joe Allen, Martin Skrtel, Mamadou Sakho, Kolo Touré and Mario Balotelli were either sold or released following the end of their contract. But no departure was more surprising than Christian Benteke. Only 12 months after arriving at Anfield, the Belgian striker was sold to Crystal Palace for around £30 million, showing a stance from Klopp of the style of player he craves and the support of the board. The start of the 2016-17 campaign served as an encapsulation of the Reds' entire season. A 4-3 victory against Arsenal proved 2 things. Liverpool would tough it out against stronger opposition, and there would be goals. They followed this with a surprising 2-0 defeat at Turf Moor, which was an early indicator that they would struggle on the road against the lower half of the table. However, those defeats didn't show too early. With only 2 losses from August to December, Liverpool closed off 2016 in 2nd place and looked like the real challengers to Chelsea for the Premier League title. Mane was electric, Coutinho was thriving, and Firmino was evolving into a key figure in Klopp's system. But then the collapse came. Across January and February, Liverpool picked up only 2 wins. A 3rd round replay victory against Plymouth, being knocked out by Wolves 10 days later, and a 2-0 victory against Spurs thanks to a Sadio Mane brace. In that time, Liverpool drew 4 times and lost a further 6, including 2 to Southampton in the League Cup semi-finals. Injuries played a part, but so did the lack of squad depth. Liverpool had a strong starting 11, but little behind it. This was the first real exposure of a key Klopp-era trend, struggling when key players were unavailable. Liverpool recovered though, and by the final stretch of the season, the objective was clear: return to the Champions League. A hard-fought 3-0 win over Middlesbrough on the final day secured a 4th place finish, confirming Liverpool's place back among Europe's elite. Only 3 years had passed since the Rodgers team that almost clinched the title. But as always in football, so much had changed in such little time that this felt like a real achievement. Klopp had taken Liverpool from a team drifting into irrelevance to a team with an identity. There was still work to do, but the foundations of something special were being laid. The heavy metal football was beginning to take shape. By the time the 2017-18 season rolled around, Liverpool had fully stepped into the next phase of their evolution under Klopp. The high-energy, full-throttle football he had envisioned was no longer an experiment. It was reality. The team pressed harder, attacked faster, and overwhelmed opponents with a style that left little room for hesitation. This was heavy metal football in its purest form. The biggest change came in the summer transfer window. Mohamed Salah arrived from Roma for what many believed was an inflated fee, 37 million for a winger who had struggled at Chelsea. It took him about 5 minutes to prove everyone wrong. Salah's debut season was a revelation. 32 Premier League goals, 44 in all competitions. He was electric, ruthless, unplayable. Alongside Salah, Liverpool recruited Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain and Andy Robertson from Arsenal and Hull respectively, who when fit had the work rate and energy to match Klopp's gegenpressing style. Liverpool's season started with glimpses of what they could become. A dominant 4-0 win over Arsenal in August sent an early message, but a brutal 5-0 defeat to Manchester City a few weeks later showed the gaps that still needed to be filled. Sadio Mane's red card for a high boot on Ederson was the headline, but the game itself was a reminder that Liverpool, whilst exciting, was still vulnerable. That vulnerability began to fade in January, when Virgil van Dijk arrived from Southampton. Liverpool had pursued him for months, even facing accusations of tapping him up. But when he finally arrived for a then world record fee for a defender of £75 million, he transformed the backline overnight. His debut? A towering header in a Merseyside derby to knock Everton up the FA Cup. It was a statement. Van Dijk wasn't just a good signing, he was a game changer. The money for Van Dijk came in the form of a huge departure. Only a week later, Liverpool lost Philippe Coutinho to Barcelona in a record-breaking £142 million deal. Coutinho leaving felt like the last of the old guard of Liverpool players, the final remnant of Brendan Rodgers' nearly generation. Coutinho wasn't forced out, despite the turn in form and belief around Anfield. Coutinho pushed for a move to Spain 6 months earlier, but was priced out of his desired move. By the time January came round, Liverpool knew there was no keeping their midfield maestro. In previous years, losing their best player would have been a death sentence, but this time it was different. Rather than breaking down, Liverpool grew stronger. The attack became even more direct, the midfield more balanced, and in the Champions League, the team exploded into life. They powered through the knockout rounds, brushing aside Porto, dismantling Manchester City in the quarters, and surviving a wild semi-final against Roma. But then came Kiev. Liverpool's first Champions League final since 2007 ended in disaster. Mohamed Salah was forced off injured after an infamous Sergio Ramos challenge, and with him went Liverpool's attacking edge. Then came Loris Karius. 2 catastrophic errors. The first gifting Karim Benzema an open goal. The second allowing Gareth Bale's long-range strike to slip through his hands, sealed a 3-1 defeat to Real Madrid. A night that could have been glorious turned into heartbreak. Despite a Champions League final, an unbeaten record at home in the league, and a record-breaking season by Mo Salah, Liverpool finished 2017-18 empty-handed. Klopp and Liverpool responded in the only way they knew how, by getting better. The summer transfer window was about fixing weaknesses. Alisson Becker arrived from Roma for £67 million, bringing an end to the goalkeeping uncertainty. Fabinho joined from the Magic Monaco side that pipped PSG to the Ligue 1 title, adding steel to the midfield. There were also additions of Xherdan Shaqiri and Naby Keita to help bolster their squad. Liverpool were almost unbreakable. The first half of the season saw them lose 0 games, draw only 3, and pick up 17 wins, including a 9-match winning streak to go into 2019. This was a squad that had quality oozing from every corner. Salah, Mane and Firmino comprised an attacking line that was direct, fluid and breathtaking. In place of the departed Coutinho, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson provided the creative side, with Trent averaging a goal or assist every other game from fullback. The first game of the new year, first versus second. Liverpool versus Manchester City. Pep Guardiola said before the game that if Manchester City lose, the title is almost already over, setting the scene for the clash at the top. Liverpool lost 2-1 to Manchester City, helped by John Stones clearing the ball 1.13 centimetres off the line, cutting the deficit to 4 points. Liverpool had lost their first and last game of the season. Despite only dropping points 4 more times in the league and going unbeaten for the second season in a row, Liverpool would finish second in the Premier League, getting 97 points, the most by any team to not win the title, and only 1 behind champions City. It was a grueling, relentless, and unforgiving season. Football does not work like this, but it felt like Liverpool had earned something. A team finishing second in the league can look at their performances, analyse them, and build through summer a belief that they know what needs to be done to do one better the following season. Europe, however, does not work the same way. There are too many variables, and often if a team misses out by the closest margins, they wonder if the chance will ever come round again. Coming off of the previous 3-1 loss to Madrid, this phenomenon did not face Liverpool. The group stage was by all accounts a dismal display. After losing to all 3 of their opponents away from home, PSG, Red Star Belgrade and Napoli, Liverpool nearly fell into the Europa League. However, Liverpool just needed to win against Napoli with a clean sheet or by 2 clear goals to progress. Despite Salah being the match winner, the plaudits were on new signing Alisson, whose injury time save sent them through the group stages in second place. Up first in the knockouts, Bayern Munich. After a goalless draw at Anfield, it would be nearly a month until Liverpool headed to Germany for the rematch. However, Liverpool left victorious. A brace from Sadio Mane and a goal from Virgil van Dijk left them 3-1 victors and put them into the quarter-finals. Without a doubt the easiest round of the tournament, Liverpool showed their class against Porto, running up 6-1 aggregate score across the 2 legs. However, Liverpool's season hit turbulence in Spain. Up against Barcelona, they saw 3 goals in with no reply, including a Lionel Messi free kick to rack up 600 goals for the Spanish Giants. The score could have been 4 had it not been for a poor bout of judgment at the death by Ousmane Dembele. Still, that would hardly be consequential, right? Then came that night at Anfield. With no Salah, no Firmino, and a 3-goal deficit to overturn, Liverpool had a near insurmountable task.
Here's Mane, Henderson, still Henderson! Safe by the goalkeeper, and in by Divock Origi. In the middle, there's not much else to aim for. Now there is, it's in! It's Gini Wijnaldum for Liverpool! He's caught in a beauty! Shaqiri, Wijnaldum! Oh my goodness gracious me! The unthinkable! The unbelievable! Liverpool are level from 3 down against Barcelona! The raw emotion of what's going on in this game. Early goal, Origi! Liverpool he's coming! He's coming! What a piece of quick thinking from Trent Alexander-Arnold! And Divock Origi has 2, and Liverpool have 4.
Anfield under Klopp had become a talking point many times across his tenure, a place no player, manager or fan loved to go. Klopp deserves credit for instructing Shaqiri and Origi to function in ways they previously never had. Origi and Wijnaldum too for their braces, but at the end of the game it felt like the real match winner came from the atmosphere of Anfield, under the floodlights. Somehow, against all the odds, Liverpool were into the Champions League final for the 2nd season in a row, with an all-English tie set up against Tottenham Hotspur. Spurs themselves had a roller coaster of a journey to the final, knocking Manchester City out in the quarters 4-4 on away goals, with VAR ruling out a last-minute Raheem Sterling goal. They followed that up against Ajax, again proceeding on away goals thanks to a Lucas Moura hat-trick in Amsterdam. The stage was set for an electric all-English final. This time, there was no drama. A 2-0 victory over Tottenham in the final. Functional, effective, almost boring, but it crowned Liverpool champions of Europe for the 6th time. This Klopp side had their first trophy, Liverpool their first since the League Cup in 2012, and finally the fruits of Liverpool's labour had come through. In many ways, Liverpool under Klopp played a similar way to Rodgers. They scored at an insane rate, and their attackers ebbed and flowed across the front line in the most fluid of ways. But Klopp could get Liverpool over the line in a way that Rodgers couldn't. The transfers were smarter, the football was less leaky, and the belief around the club was indescribable. Even when Klopp had similar struggles, such as losing a key player to Barcelona, it did not nearly have the same impact as previous times. Despite agitation from the fans, Liverpool chose to do little business in the summer of 2019. Accusations of tight purse strings started flying around at FSG, but the belief in the players and the manager was still there. The expectations, for maybe the first time under Klopp, were high. Riding off the unbelievable league form as well as their glory in Europe, all fans wanted the same thing: the Premier League title. Liverpool started the season like a team possessed. By Christmas, they were already out of sight. By February, it wasn't a matter of if they would win the league, but when. They won an astonishing 26 of their first 27 games, at one point holding a 25-point lead at the top. Even a pandemic-induced pause couldn't slow them down. Despite cup disappointment and controversy, with an Alvaro Morata last-second goal knocking them out of the Europa, and a 5-0 thumping to Aston Villa in the EFL quarters, due to the Club World Cup semi-final played only a day later, Liverpool were utterly emphatic in the league. The results were one thing, but the way they played was just as exceptional. Alisson looked like the best shot stopper in the world. Alexander-Arnold and Robertson again ran the show from either flank of defence. Van Dijk and Matip finally felt like a partnership worth shouting about. Wijnaldum, Henderson and Fabinho provided enough energy, resilience and intelligence to allow others to flourish. And what more can be said about the front three of Salah, Mane and Firmino? Jurgen Klopp had created a team so dominant in every aspect of the game, a team full of energy from minute 1 to minute 90. Combined with a technical level only matched by Manchester City, FSG trusted him to mould this squad into his vision, and Liverpool reaped the rewards. From a summer where no real first-team signings were made, Klopp had created a team that would go down in Liverpool and Premier League folklore, and rise him to one of Liverpool's greats, with time to spare. Despite a shock 3-0 defeat to Watford, ending any invincible shouts, and a couple slip-ups in the latter part of the season to Manchester City and Arsenal, Liverpool were finally champions of England again, after 30 years. It wasn't just the title, it was the most dominant league campaign England had ever seen. Fastest team to win it, most wins in a season, 99 points. A new era of dominance had surely arrived. Then, just as quickly as they rose to the top, the fall began. The warning signs were there early. The Community Shield lost to Arsenal on penalties. A sluggish start, but nothing compared to what came next. October, Goodison Park. Jordan Pickford charges out recklessly, scything through Virgil van Dijk. No foul, no red card, no VAR intervention. But Van Dijk was gone for the season. That was just the beginning. Within weeks, Joe Gomez suffered a freak injury on international duty. Joel Matip followed. By the new year, Liverpool had no fit senior centre-backs. Fabinho was forced to drop into the defence, then Jordan Henderson. The entire system collapsed. The defining stat? 6 straight defeats at Anfield, the place that had become a fortress. The home unbeaten streak, which had stretched to 68 games, was shattered by Burnley. A 7-2 humiliation at the hands of Aston Villa summed up a chaotic campaign. Injuries played a huge part, but so too did players' performances. Mane and Firmino were less quick and destructive, and often their attack boiled down to a bit of Mo Salah brilliance. As good and devastating as heavy metal football is, the mental and physical toll it takes on players makes it hard to maintain at such a high level. And yet, even in adversity, Klopp's Liverpool found a way. Alisson Becker's last-minute header against West Brom was one of the most surreal moments in Premier League history, and it helped them scrape into the top 4. They finished third. A collapse had been avoided, but the invincibility was gone. Such was the belief around Klopp as a manager, that little to no blame was thrown his way. In a period of the game where managers are often the first and most criticised, the Liverpool faithful stood by him, a true testament to how devoted he had made himself to Liverpool. By the time the 21-22 season began, Liverpool weren't chasing redemption, they were hunting greatness. The previous campaign had been an exhausting, injury-plagued grind, but they had still clawed their way to a third-place finish. Now, with a full-strength squad, Virgil van Dijk restored at the back, and the spine of Klopp's system intact, Liverpool were back to challenge for everything. In the summer, Shaqiri and Wijnaldum left, but Ibrahim Konate came in for just north of £35 million. After a season where Liverpool finished with 20 different centre-back pairings, Klopp wanted to make sure he had an able deputy behind Van Dijk and Matip. More important than signings were the extensions, 11 first-team extensions, with the notable signatures being that of Trent, Fabinho, Alisson, Van Dijk, Robertson and Henderson. After a grueling campaign, the club's biggest stars stayed loyal. They started strong. A 3-0 away win at Norwich on the opening day set the tone. Salah pulled the strings, Jota and Firmino both got on the score sheet, and Liverpool looked refreshed. Alisson was back marshalling the defence, Matip and Van Dijk were building rhythm, and the fullbacks bombed forward with confidence. It wasn't a reinvention, it was a restoration. The early months brought consistency, and with it, momentum. A comfortable 2-0 win over Burnley, a gritty away win at Ellen Road, where Harvey Elliott, only 18, looked like a mainstay, until a horrific ankle injury cut his season short. The real statement came at Old Trafford in late October. Liverpool didn't just beat Manchester United, they humiliated them, 5-0. Salah, who had started the season in irresistible form, scored a hat-trick. Every touch he took looked golden. Keita opened the scoring, Jota followed, and by the time Pogba was sent off, the United end had already begun to empty. But perhaps the purest form of magic came 3 weeks earlier at Anfield, when Manchester City came to town. The first half was cagey, but in the second, the match caught fire. Mane opened the scoring.
It is Sadio Mane!
Foden equalised with a fierce finish.
And Phil Foden!
And then came Salah, twisting, turning, slaloming past defenders like they weren't even there. He rifled the ball into the far corner, and even the away end applauded. It was one of the goals of the season. City eventually equalised again, De Bruyne finding a deflection to level it late, but it didn't matter. What mattered was the message. Liverpool were again going toe-to-toe with the champions. As the season wore on, the fixtures came thick and fast. The winter brought its usual chaos. AFCON deprived Liverpool of Salah, Mane and Keita. But Klopp rotated shrewdly, and the squad stepped up. January also brought a new face. Luis Diaz, signed from Porto, arrived with a little fuss and made an instant impact. Direct, fearless and relentless, he fit Klopp's system like he'd been born into it. And then came the run. Liverpool didn't just find form, they became a machine. From January until May, they did not lose a single league game. In every competition, they advanced. The defence was airtight, the press suffocating, and the front line devastating. By the time April rolled around, Liverpool were in contention for a quadruple. At Wembley, they faced Chelsea twice in both domestic cup finals. Both times, after 120 minutes, the scoreline remained goalless. Both times, it went to penalties. In the League Cup, Kepa skied the decisive kick. In the FA Cup, Alisson made the save that mattered. Liverpool had claimed 2 trophies. Neither final had goals, but both had heart. Every player fought to the end. These weren't just trophies, they were validations of Liverpool's depth, mentality, and sheer willpower. The league race went to the wire. Manchester City led by a single point on the final day. Liverpool hosted Wolves. City welcomed Aston Villa. When Wolves scored early, anxiety ripped through Anfield. But Mane quickly levelled, and when news filtered through that a Steven Gerrard-led Villa were 2 up at the Etihad, hope soared. Salah's goal in the 84th minute gave Liverpool the lead, and at that moment, they were champions. But then came the gut-wrenching twist. Gundogan scored, Rodri followed, then Gundogan again. 3 goals in 5 minutes. City had turned it around. Liverpool won their game, but it wasn't enough. 1 point short, 1 goal shy, the finest of margins. In Europe, they marched to Paris. Inter Milan, Benfica and Villarreal were all dealt with, although not without scares. The semi-final second leg against Villarreal saw Liverpool go in 2-0 down at half-time, but the response was ruthless. Fabinho, Diaz and Mane turned it around. They booked their 3rd Champions League final in 5 years. But Paris brought heartbreak. Real Madrid offered very little attacking threat, but one chance fell to Vinicius Jr. at the back post, and he took it. Courtois, on the other hand, had the game of his life. He denied Salah again and again, repelled everything Liverpool threw at him. And when the final whistle blew, Liverpool were left empty-handed. 1 defensive lapse, and the dream was gone. When the dust settled, Liverpool had played every single match available to them. 63 games, 2 trophies, 92 points in the league, runners-up in the Champions League. It could have been a quadruple. It ended as a double. And yet it didn't feel like a failure. It felt like history. Salah finished the season with 23 league goals and 13 assists. He was named PFA Player of the Year and became the first Liverpool player to win the club's Player of the Season award 3 times in a row. The 21-22 season didn't end with ultimate glory, but it reaffirmed everything Klopp had built. Togetherness, belief, power, and above them all, the rarest of things in modern football, a team worth believing in right to the very end. The 22-23 season began not with a whimper, but with a trophy. Liverpool beat Manchester City 3-1 in the Community Shield, a win that briefly suggested they were still the only team capable of challenging Pep Guardiola's juggernaut. But as the campaign unfolded, it became clear this Liverpool side was not the one that had gone the distance in May. Sadio Mane and Divock Origi left Anfield for Bayern Munich and AC Milan respectively, 2 beloved figures of the Klopp era. In their place came Darwin Núñez from Benfica. In the same summer, Manchester City signed Erling Haaland. The £85 million price tag on Núñez was a sign that Liverpool had faith in him being as efficient. The cracks, however, started to show immediately. Liverpool dropped points in their opening 2 games, drawing away at Fulham and at home to Crystal Palace. The latter was overshadowed by Núñez being sent off for a headbutt in just his 2nd league appearance. Then came a 2-1 defeat at Old Trafford against a struggling Manchester United, confirming this wasn't just a slow start, something deeper was wrong. They responded with a record-equalling 9-0 demolition of Bournemouth, followed by a dramatic 98th minute winner against Newcastle. But those bursts of results were fleeting. It would be 6 weeks before their next league win. In the Champions League, they were humbled 4-1 by Napoli in the opening group match, Liverpool's worst European defeat under Klopp. It sparked a recovery in the group, with back-to-back wins over Ajax and Rangers, but the damage to their domestic campaign was already becoming apparent. Despite a gritty 1-0 win over Manchester City in October, Liverpool's inconsistency was relentless. They beat West Ham and Napoli, but sandwiched in between the frustrating losses to Nottingham Forest and Leeds. The loss to Leeds ended a 29-game unbeaten streak at Anfield in the league. By the World Cup break, they were hanging on to top 4 hopes by a thread. The winter did not bring relief. Luis Diaz's knee injury worsened, and Liverpool were eliminated from the Carabao Cup by Manchester City upon return. January was even worse. Defeats to Brentford, Brighton and Wolves left them 10th in the Premier League. For a team that had competed in every game possible the year before, this felt like freefall. Then, out of nowhere, a spark. Liverpool went on a 5-game unbeaten run, with clean sheets throughout. A 2-0 derby win over Everton, a clinical victory at Newcastle, and then the high point. A historic 7-0 win against Manchester United at Anfield. It was Liverpool's biggest ever win in the fixture, but fittingly for this chaotic season, the euphoria barely lasted a week. They lost 1-0 to Bournemouth in the very next match. In Europe, hopes of another deep Champions League run were crushed by the usual suspects, Real Madrid. A blistering first 20 minutes at Anfield saw Liverpool go 2-0 up, but they collapsed to a 5-2 defeat. Madrid finished the draw at the Bernabeu with a 1-0 win. It was a painful echo of the previous year's final. This time though, there was no sense of injustice. They'd been simply outclassed. With nothing left to play for but pride, Klopp took a tactical gamble. He moved Trent Alexander-Arnold into a hybrid midfield role, an experiment that paid off. Liverpool ended the season with an 11-game unbeaten streak, including a 7-match winning streak. They hit 6 pass leads, scored 4 on a thriller against Tottenham, and came from 2 down to draw against Arsenal. There were signs of life, but it was too little, too late. Fifth place meant no Champions League for the first time in 6 years. But the end of the season offered a moment to say goodbye. Roberto Firmino, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, James Milner and Naby Keita all played their final games for the club. Fittingly, it was Firmino, once the glue in Klopp's pressing machine, who scored a farewell goal in his last Anfield appearance, a late equaliser against Aston Villa. The final match, a 4-4 draw against Southampton, summed up the season in miniature form. Wild, chaotic, thrilling at times, but ultimately unsatisfying. Individually, Mohamed Salah continued to deliver, scoring 30 goals in all competitions and providing 16 assists. He broke Robbie Fowler's Premier League goal-scoring record for Liverpool. Even in a year where the system faltered around him, Salah remained relentlessly productive. At the other end of the pitch, Alisson Becker had arguably his best season in a Liverpool shirt. Without his shot-stopping heroics, Liverpool's campaign might have gone from disappointing to disastrous. Still, the story of 2022-23 was not one of individual brilliance. It was one of a team caught between eras. Too many players past their peak. Too many questions left unanswered. A rebuild was now inevitable. This was the first time under Klopp that Liverpool had truly felt ordinary. The magic was still there, flickering in moments, but the fear factor was gone. The intensity had dipped. The margins that had once taken them to glory had now turned against them. If the season before had been about chasing immortality, the 22-23 season was about confronting mortality. The dynasty was creaking. The end of an era was no longer looming. It had arrived. Liverpool's 2023-24 season began with cautious optimism. After a lacklustre year by all comparisons, they found themselves in the Europa League, a far cry from the Champions League win, but a competition in which they started out as clear favourites. That summer was the busiest under Klopp, with 6 key figures departing in the space of a month. Fabinho, Milner, Keita, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Firmino and skipper Jordan Henderson all departed, leaving a mini rebuild as necessary. Klopp had done well to keep almost his entire squad around for his whole tenure. Save for Mane, Origi, Shaqiri and Wijnaldum, who had all left in the last 24 months, the squad stayed close to identical, and it was only natural that as players aged, Klopp's high-intensity regime had sped past some of their squad. In their place, Liverpool spent close to £150 million on a brand new midfield. Alexis McAllister joined from Brighton, whilst they raided Germany with the signings of Dominik Szoboszlai, Wataru Endo and Ryan Gravenberch. The campaign began strongly. A win at Newcastle with only 10 men, sealed by a late brace from Darwin Núñez, revived talk of the mentality monsters Klopp once made famous. Home form was electric in the early months. A dramatic 4-3 victory over Fulham, decided by a late winner from Trent Alexander-Arnold, seemed to reawaken Anfield's belief. There were glimpses of a new attacking identity, one built around the youthful energy of Dominik Szoboszlai and Alexis McAllister, two of the summer's standout signings. Yet signs of vulnerability were never far away. The first major warning came at Tottenham, where Liverpool were beaten 2-1 in controversial fashion. Luis Diaz had a goal wrongly ruled out for offside, despite replay showing he was clearly onside. A baffling failure of the VAR process left the football world stunned, and Liverpool incensed. The match ended with 9 Liverpool players on the pitch, and a Joel Matip own goal in stoppage time, summing up the chaos. The season's first major turning point came off the pitch, when Klopp spoke to the fans in January. After 9 years with the club, Jurgen Klopp would step down at the end of the season, citing a lack of energy and the need for the club to be led by a fresh voice. Liverpool was still competing on 4 fronts at the time, chasing another improbable quadruple, and the timing of the announcement left many wondering whether the emotional weight of that news would carry consequences. In the end, it arguably did. Liverpool remained in contention for multiple trophies into the spring. They progressed in the FA Cup and Europa League while keeping pace in the league. The January window passed quietly, but the biggest story was Mohamed Salah's hamstring injury suffered at the Africa Cup of Nations. It disrupted his season significantly. Although he still ended the year as Liverpool's top scorer of the 25 goals, he was never truly able to recapture his rhythm in the second half of the campaign. The turning point came in March. A frantic FA Cup quarter-final at Old Trafford saw Liverpool knocked out in extra time by their old enemy, Manchester United. Klopp's side had led deep into the second half and again in extra time, but they were pegged back and ultimately beaten 4-3. Days later, they were stunned at Anfield by Atalanta in the Europa League. A 3-0 home defeat effectively ended the European hopes and marked the club's worst home result in the Klopp era. Anfield, once a fortress, no longer felt unbreachable. That loss was compounded by a defeat to Crystal Palace at home, which ended any realistic hopes of a league title. Liverpool had lost just 2 of their first 32 league games, but by the time the final stretch had arrived, their form had dipped. The energy had faded. Klopp's final push fell short. Yet amid the disappointment, there were moments to savour. The League Cup triumph provided one. So too did the emergence of younger players like Conor Bradley and Jarell Quansah. Even more established names such as Harvey Elliott showing growth, while Wataru Endo provided an inspired signing in midfield, helping stabilise the team at crucial moments. Alexis McAllister's curling strike against Fulham in December was one of the goals of the season. Szoboszlai's thunderbolt against Leicester in the Carabao Cup also stood out. The most consistent figure throughout was Virgil van Dijk. Named club captain after Jordan Henderson's departure, the Dutchman was a rock in defence, despite the injuries around him. He missed just 2 league games all season, both through suspension in the opening month. While Alisson, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Andrew Robertson, Joel Matip, and Ibrahima Konate all dealing with injuries at various points, Van Dijk's leadership and availability became essential. He ended the season with a trophy-winning goal at Wembley, and a level of performance that re-established him among the world's best defenders. As the curtain closed on Klopp's 9-year reign, emotions ran high. His farewell match at Anfield was marked by banners, tributes, and chants that echoed long after the final whistle. The German leaves behind a legacy that will endure for generations. He turned doubters into believers, brought trophies back to Liverpool, and gave fans some of the most joyous nights in the club's modern history. At the start of this video, we mentioned the 3 factors we saw pivotal to defining a legacy: longevity, success, culture. Jurgen Klopp managed Liverpool for 9 years, the most of any team in his career. His side battled through and won during a global pandemic, and played scintillating football for close to a decade. Across that time, Liverpool picked up 8 trophies: 2 League Cups, 1 FA Cup, 1 Club World Cup, 1 Super Cup, 1 Community Shield, 1 Premier League, and 1 Champions League. Klopp left Liverpool as the club's 3rd most decorated manager, behind legends Bill Shankly and Bob Paisley. He brought the club their first trophy in 7 years, and their first league title in 30. Longevity and success, tick. If you stroll through Liverpool and find yourself on Randolph Street, you'll find a wall-sized mural of Jurgen Klopp. Take a short walk to Skerries Road, and you'll see another. But you'll even find one on Jamaica Street. Across the city of Liverpool, you'll find murals of Steven Gerrard, Ian Rush, Ray Clements, Mohamed Salah, and many more. You won't find many figures with 3. From the minute he walked into Anfield and dubbed himself the normal one, Klopp won the hearts of the Liverpool faithful. Results and trophies matter, but Liverpool required a figure that can transcend the sport and represent the devoted city, and there is no doubt Jurgen Klopp achieved that and more. Culture, tick. Some will argue there could have been more. Only one each of the FA Cup, Premier League and Champions League is certainly not something to laugh at, but there's always an element that Liverpool should have shared Manchester City's spoils more than they did. Wherever you sit on that debate, there is no doubt that during his time at Liverpool, Jurgen Klopp created a dynasty. He brought back the glory days, playing exhilarating football, all whilst being a likeable, charming, funny human being. With the new season underway and Liverpool very much in the title race, the next question arises: is Liverpool's new dynasty only just around the corner?